Raya grew up with both a warrior's training and a diplomat's patience, raised by a father who believed in one thing above all, that people could be trusted if they chose to be. The land he ruled over, the Heart, once kept the Dragon Gem, a shimmering stone said to hold the dragon's magic and to keep a mindless, spreading evil called the Droon at bay. As a kid, Raya watched dragons and human leaders try to knit the fractured lands of Kumandra back together, and she believed in that unity the way some kids believe in superheroes. Her whole life became about protecting that fragile trust. The story kicks off with a deep, old-timey recounting. Long ago, the dragons saved the world by sacrificing their power, putting it into the Dragon Gem to stop the Droon. That's the world Raya inherits. Rivers, mountains, and 5 regions named Heart, Fang, Spine, Talon, and Tail, each with its own culture and its own reasons to eye the others like potential rivals, not friends. Raya's dad, Chief Benja, is basically the human side of a peace treaty, and he's determined to bring the chiefs together to formally end old hostilities. He's a warm, thoughtful leader, the kind of dad you'd want at a PTA meeting and also on a battlefield. Of course, nothing is that simple. At a meeting meant to cement unity, suspicion and fear bubble up. One act of mistrust, a theft, a misstep, a betrayal, shatters more than just promises. The Dragon Gem ends up broken, the Droon are released, and in an instant, dragon magic and people's lives are ripped away. Dragons are turned to stone. Entire stretches of the population freeze, literally, into statues. The world Raya knew collapses into fear and blame, and the 5 regions go back to their old defensive postures. Raya loses more than a political dream. She loses part of herself and the trust her father gave to everyone else. Before the dust settles, her father dies, trying to protect what remained of the gem and the idea of unity. That loss hardens Raya into something urgent. If people won't work together, she will somehow gather the pieces of hope herself. Fast forward years later, and Raya is a lone traveler, an armored warrior wandering a divided countryside. She carries both the broken shard of the Dragon Gem and the responsibility for trying to find the last dragon, because the legends say the dragon's power can fix everything. In pursuit of that hope, she follows a trail of clues, each leading into one of the other lands. Along the way, she meets a ridiculously memorable little gang. Baun, a fast-talking, entrepreneurial boy captain who runs a riverboat restaurant and has an optimistic smile and an eye for profit. Tong, a huge, hulky weapon maker with a soft spot for a baby living with him, and Little Noi, the most ferocious baby con artist you didn't know you needed in your life. They're comic relief and heart, and they latch on to Raya for the ride, offering help in exchange for future business ventures and occasionally snacks. Raya's search takes her to Tail first, then Spine, Talon, and finally Fang. The trip is a fun mix of action set pieces and quieter character moments. She has to outmaneuver dangerous mercenaries and local warlords, solve how to trust people who have their guard up because they remember how everyone betrayed everyone else centuries ago, and deal with her own stubborn reluctance to open up. The movie does a nice balancing act. It keeps the stakes high. The Droon is out there, devouring people, while also making space for jokes and the growing, awkward family vibe between Raya and her unlikely travel companions. The real twist comes when Raya finally finds Sisu, the last dragon. Sisu isn't what Raya expects. She's not a huge, fearsome, cosmic beast, but a slightly goofy, vulnerable, and deeply sincere creature who takes on a humanish form. Voiced and written with a lot of personality, Sisu cracks jokes and has an oddball wisdom that's part child, part ancient being who's been around long enough to know what matters most. She's not invulnerable. If anything, she's small in power compared to the legend, and she explains that while dragons were once strong enough to stop the Droon, they gave their might away to humans centuries ago. Sisu's optimism and humor gently prod at Raya's defensive armor. Where Raya's fist clutches pieces of a plan, Sisu's questions nudge open the possibility of healing things that are broken without force. Together, they pursue the remaining fragments of the Dragon Gem. That search makes for a great buddy quest. Raya's seriousness contrasts with Sisu's quirkiness and with the little crew's cartoonish entrepreneurial instincts. There's a heartfelt scene in Spine where Sisu and the crew improvise a plan to retrieve a shard. Like a good road movie, the journey is where we see characters be themselves and reveal their weaknesses. Raya's guardedness hides a deep loneliness, and you can feel that every time she hesitates before trusting another hand.
Sisu's lines are often the ones that undercut the tension with warmth. She'll say something ridiculous, and it'll break the scene just enough for us to remember these are people and dragons trying their best in a messy world. But there's a shadow that never stops looming: Namaari. Once Raya's playmate and then friend turned foe, Namaari is now a high-ranking warrior from the Fang tribe. She's fierce, controlled, and marked by the same losses that shaped Raya. But where Raya clings to hope, Namaari's approach is distrust that hardens into survivalism. She and Raya have a complicated history. As kids, they were close. As adults, they've become symbols of their tribe's choices. Namaari represents the argument that power and security come from strength and the willingness to take what's necessary in a cold world. That ideological contrast fuels much of the film's tension. I won't pretend the plot never surprises you. Maybe you saw one major betrayal coming, but how the story handles the fallout matters more than the twist. There's a moment when Raya, desperate to protect everyone on her terms, does the exact thing her father had hoped to avoid. She refuses to trust, she keeps control, and that refusal to share becomes the catalyst that makes things worse. It's messy and human. The film uses that to ask its central question: can you heal a fractured world if you won't risk your heart? Is trust naive, or is it necessary? There's a lot of fun choreography in the second half, as alliances shift and the Droon grow closer. The trio with Baun, Tong, and Noi provide comic timing that keeps the heavy parts from becoming unbearably grim. Little Noi specifically is a standout, a tiny, silent thief who steals every scene she's in. The relationships that form are the movie's emotional backbone: Raya and Sisu's growing rapport, the three sidekicks' loyalty, and the fragile, simmering connection with Namaari. Even the background characters, the torn-apart citizens of the Five Lands, get small, meaningful beats that remind you this is about real people, not just scores on a scoreboard. As the climax approaches, everything coalesces around a desperate plan to put the Dragon Gem back together and stop the Droon for good. It's an action set piece wrapped around the film's moral core. Ultimately, defeating the Droon requires more than physical might. It demands that the leaders of the lands actually trust each other. There's betrayal and there's redemption. Characters make choices that cost them and then make bigger choices that give things back. Without spoiling every turn, know this: the film does not take the easy route. Trust is awkward, awkwardly earned, and the final push to mend the gem happens because people take emotional risks, not just because someone has a better sword. Sisu's role is delightfully humanizing. She's funny, she's scared, she's brave in a way that doesn't always look heroic on the surface. The film makes the dragons rare, wise, and surprisingly relatable, and their return, or lack thereof, matters less than the way people choose to be toward one another. The ending isn't a packaged, too neat happily ever after. It's an earned thawing of frozen attitudes, and more importantly, an invitation to work on trust as an everyday practice. Raya learns that even if she can't fix betrayal with one heroic act, she can start a different kind of repair by letting someone in, by choosing to trust incrementally. That's the emotional zinger. Unity doesn't happen because of one big speech. It happens because lots of small, sometimes embarrassing acts of faith pile up into something stronger than fear. Stylistically, the movie is gorgeous: lush landscapes, inventive creature design, and action scenes that move with clear purpose. Tonally, it balances humor and heart with popcorn-friendly sequences, so you get laughs and a few tearful, quiet moments. There's also a solid dose of cultural flavor in the world building. Different regions have distinct visual identities and customs, which makes the journey feel like a tour through someone's very heartfelt, lived-in fantasy map. The soundtrack and animation amplify the emotional beats without being manipulative. They support the story rather than pushing it. If there's a downside, it's sometimes that the runtime tries to juggle too many beats. Side characters get snapshots more than full chapters, but that's not a fatal flaw. The film's strengths are in its characters and its central theme, and those carry it home. Raya herself is a terrific protagonist, stubborn, skilled, flawed, and ultimately open to growth. She's the kind of lead you root for because she screws up and then tries to do better. Namaari's arc is complicated in a way that feels earned, not cheapened for drama. Sisu is a joy, both comic relief and emotional center, and the crew around Raya keeps things lively and grounded. All told, the movie is a smart, moving piece of storytelling with a clear moral about the difficulty and necessity of trust. It's not preachy, it's practical and emotionally honest. You come away with a hopeful, slightly bittersweet feeling. Healing takes time. It takes fools and optimists and cynics willing to meet halfway, and sometimes it takes a dragon who knows how to make a joke right when the pressure is highest. It's a family-friendly adventure with real heart, a few great laughs, and a message that maybe, just maybe, choosing to trust is the braver move of the two.